Chapter 2 Roll Call. September 2nd held a new light as Herald's alarm shook itself off axis and onto the floor. He swatted at it with a stupor as he slowly righted to the brightness of the room. It was 8:14 a.m. He was going to be late. The phone rang as Herald tried to pull a fresh pair of slacks on from his dwindling pile of remaining clean clothes. He rushed to grab a clean lab jacket and had left with barely enough time to slip on shoes and gather his keys and wallet. The machine kicked in on the fourth ring. Herald was in the elevator as the line went dead. Herald had less than 15 minutes to cover 8 blocks in New York on foot. This would be the first time ever being tardy to his own initial staff meeting. It didn't bode well for his appearance as the lead researcher on the project. The street was undulating with people. Herald wasn't used to the fast pace. He held one hand tight inside his pants pocket, trying to prevent the numerous shoulder bumps from turning into opportune muggings. On the big screens described the buildings and architecture. The news above Herald was buzzing about vampires, about the historic research he was about to begin. 8 blocks were grueling. His legs were limp carrots by the time he walked into the building Cillian Industries leased to perform the studies. The security guard stood near the entrance. "Mr. Thompson, you need to pick up your new badge to use the elevator and get through the checkpoints." What checkpoints? Herald hadn't noticed any when he went to his lab a few days ago. He handed his clip to the guard and received his new one. "Next, you're going to tell me I need to sign in with a drop of blood, right?" "No, Mr. Thompson. Not yet, at least." The guard had a worried expression. Herald walked over to the elevator and pushed the button to no avail. "You have to swipe your badge on the right now to get it to work." The guard shouted out from across the empty room. Herald saw the rectangular embossed card reader at the right of the steel doors. He swung his badge by it. The doors opened immediately. A tall man with long, straight black hair was standing, with his arms behind his back. His skin was pale, his eyes were dark, and he had a smile when he gazed upon Herald. He recognized him and was somehow pleased with what he saw. "Are you here for me?" Herald asked the poignant man. "My name is Edward Ellen Meadows. I've been sent to escort you to the main laboratory floor. There have been more changes that need to be discussed before you introduce your staff. Please step inside." Edward's movements were refined and had an eerily smooth motion to them. Herald walked into the elevator as Edward pressed the button for the 27th floor. "The lab is on the 12th level," Herald spoke up. "Not anymore," Edward corrected. "I don't know who you are, Edward, but—" Herald was cut off. "It's Ellen. I go by Ellen," he interrupted Herald. "I can assure you that you will have plenty of time to. For now, you must understand that your lab has been reset to include a broader range of research." Herald kept his mouth shut, letting the elevator rise to their destination in silence. The doors opened and Ellen gestured for Herald to go first. They made their way down an unfamiliar hallway. There was a long series of dorm-style doors with nameplates on them. They were all blank as Herald searched for some reasoning behind them. "What are those for?" Herald asked. Ellen said nothing. The hall continued as Herald came to a large security door. The metal was painted a drab, pale blue. The plaque at eye level read Cillian Industries Control Facility Research Room. There was no card reader, no handle, only a small depression to the right of the frame big enough for the end of a pencil to fit in. "How do we get in?" Herald didn't remember the guard saying anything about it. Ellen raised his finger and placed it into the hole. He turned to Herald. "Like this." Ellen flinched in pain for a brief second. He removed his finger and spoke towards the door. He held his hand tight, trying to keep his finger from Herald's sight. "Verify Edward Meadows," Ellen said to an almost unnoticeable camera peephole just below the plague. A computerized voice sprang into action. "Confirmed Edward Meadows." "Please confirm, guest." "Go ahead. It doesn't hurt that bad," Ellen said to Herald as he clenched his fist. "The hell it doesn't?" I thought the guard was joking when he mentioned blood sampling for identification. "I'm not doing that." Herald pointed at the depression on the wall and shouted, "Yes, you are, you wimp." It was Jenna following up behind Herald. She placed her right index finger into the device. Jenna Hall. She turned to Herald. Man up, it's just a fingerprint scanner. But Herald looked at Ellen with discontent. Jenna grabbed Harold's hand and pushed it to the reader. Now say your name, bitch. Ouch. You're twisting it, Harold whined. Say it, Jenna pressed harder. Harold Thompson, he said as Jenna let go. The door clicked and began to slide back into the wall. See, that didn't hurt at all, Jenna proclaimed as she walked proudly into the room. Ellen put his arm around Harold and ushered him inside. From what I'm told, she's like this all the time. You'd better get used to it. You'll be seeing a lot of her. Ellen's words were lost on Harold's mind. He was thinking of his twisted digit that was throbbing as he traveled forward. They came to a set of small square lockers. Jenna placed her cell phone and leather wallet inside. Harold followed suit and locked up his things as well. Ellen watched and waited. What? You don't have to do this? Harold asked Ellen. You misunderstand. I don't carry a cell, Ellen remarked. And your wallet? Jenna asked. I don't need one. Everyone here already knows me. Ellen's answer was odd, but seemingly straightforward. Ellen led Harold and Jenna to a manned checkpoint. The guards nodded to Ellen as he passed by. The corridor behind the guards came to a white door labeled laboratory. We're here, Ellen smiled. Ellen opened the door to the large multi-station lab that took up most of the floor they were on. All of Harold's hand-picked microscopes, tubing, glasses, and instruments were at each individual station. Everything was familiar to Harold. This was home to him. The only thing that was confusing were the number of chairs at each station. In a normal lab, he was used to a single seat for each. This lab had two. You're late. I said 8:30 a.m. It's past 9. Michelle Price had crept up behind Harold and barked. You moved my things, Harold said firmly. Excuse me? Michelle was not amused. Jenna stepped up to slap Harold on the back. Oh, don't mind him. He's only tiffed you touched his toys. Then you can assure him we haven't changed any of the equipment, Michelle added, trying to backpedal. No, it's not that. Harold just isn't used to working with others, Jenna told Michelle. Yes, to Harold, these are people. Ellen spoke up with a personal commentary. Jenna and Michelle turned to question Ellen. No, he's right, Harold assured them. I don't get out much. Harold looked into the distance. There was a large open exam room. White walls filled with white chairs sat in a near-sterile environment. There was someone inside looking at him. Who's that? Harold asked Michelle. She's your first. Michelle gestured for the figure in the distance to come closer. The room was more than 300 feet away, behind glass. A security door opened in the far corner of the room. Harold searched for the person in the window. They were gone. I'm here. A deep feminine voice leaped into Harold's left ear. It was alto, smooth and deep. It provoked a warmth in Harold that he couldn't understand. God, who the hell is that? Jenna jumped into Michelle's arms suddenly. This is a research facility. You can't give every employee a heart attack before we begin. It's just rude, Michelle calmly told the new woman standing among the group. The woman was barely clothed. She had a long purple dress on. At first glance, it was strapless. But as Harold examined her appearance, he found it to be attached to her skin. There were small black grommets to which her clothing was pinned to her flesh. She was 5'10", towering over Jenna and Michelle, even Ellen. Harold saw her below his eye level. Her short black hair distracted Harold from their most obvious feature color. A dark purple, matching the dress, pervaded every corner of this woman's eyes. There was no iris. The whole pupil was transparent. Harold leaned into the mystery woman. Can I study you? The woman exhaled and smiled. I thought you already were. Harold snapped out of his daze. Are those real? Jenna stared. I mean, you're one of the vampires, right? Jenna, be respectful, Michelle commanded. No, it's fine. The woman appeared before Michelle in a flash. She placed her hand onto Jenna's right cheek. It's cold. I mean, really cold. Jenna was ecstatic. My name is Ada. She suddenly stepped in front of Harold. You must be the one who will be penetrating me. What? I didn't. I mean, I don't plan to, if Herald was blushing heavily. She's fucking with you, man. Don't you see it in her face? Every time she smiles, she's getting a rise out of you. An attractive man with short blonde hair and a chiseled face spoke up. Normally, she's always serious. It's times like this when you have to watch yourself. She has a way of provoking people into saying things they don't want to. As the man came closer, Harold realized he wasn't wearing a shirt. His defined abs seemed to glisten as he talked. Harold felt inadequate. Put your shirt back on, Michelle instructed. Are you? Harold began to ask the man something. A peak specimen of this world? Yes, I am. He was quick to boast. No, Harold sighed. I was going to ask if you were a vampire as well. What's taking you all so long? We've been waiting. Get them to the conference room. He has a staff to brief. The loudspeakers above the group blared. The voice was a young male. Harold thought that things were just getting weirder as the morning went by. You heard him. Harold, you have a meeting to go to. Michelle took Harold's arm with force. What about me? Jenna was confused. She looked for support in the faces of the others. Ellen, Iada, and the shirtless man were gone. You're part of the staff. You're coming with us. Michelle led Harold and Jenna to a back hallway that was lined with clear sending tubes. As Harold turned the corner, he noticed a row of more than a dozen people in white lab coats. They were all a blur as he scanned over the crowd. Are these all mine? Yes, they're all under you. Are you ready? Michelle placed Harold in front of the 29 employees. Here, you'll need this. Michelle passed a clipboard to Harold. What am I supposed to do with this? Harold scratched his head. Is this your first roll call? Michelle sighed. She could see the answer on Harold's face. Just read out the names and find out who is on your team. You'll be needing to get familiar with all of them over the course of this. Harold reluctantly began reading off the list. George Zimmerman. The first man on the far left of the line enthusiastically raised his hand. Here. Harold could see this was going to be a lone morning. Kathy Schultz. Here, sir. The small woman answered with equal energy. Harold lowered his head and searched for the next name. Ryan Saunders. I'm right here, Harold, Ryan answered in a calm tone. Funny seeing you here. Harold lifted his gaze. He knew this man. Ryan had been in his class 10 years ago. He had been at the top of their class, popular with the ladies, and had always one-upped Harold for as long as he knew him. Ryan's green eyes showed relief as Harold recalled him. His dirty blonde hair hadn't changed in 10 years. He was slightly taller than Harold at 6'2". He was still as muscular as ever, possibly more so. It's been a good decade, hasn't it? Ryan smiled as he stood in place. It's been better to you, trust me, Harold answered. Continue with the roster. You're on the clock. Michelle butted in. We'll catch up later, Ryan suggested. I'd like that. Harold had been put in a good mood. Besides Jenna, he didn't know anyone there. Ryan brought some needed comfort. He stared down at the list. Penny Harrington? The roll continued with bright-eyed faces. 10 minutes passed and Harold was done. Now that the introductions are over, let's meet the subjects. Michelle gestured to the far door. But I didn't get to tell them my name, Harold protested. They already know your name. You're their boss. Now follow me. Michelle scowled. The door led to a smaller exam room with 9 people in it. Harold recognized the shirtless man, Ellen, and the woman with purple eyes, Ada. The remaining 6 were new to him. The first was a young girl in her 20s with light blonde hair and blue eyes. The second was a teenage girl with short red hair that was dressed in a red pantsuit. Her eyes were also blue. Next to her was a teenage boy with short black hair and green eyes. He wore a pure black suit. Fourth was a man in his 30s with a fluffy fur coat on. His ginger hair and freckles displayed his Irish roots well. His green eyes were light. Ellen sat next to him, arm in arm. The shirtless man was 6th. 7th was a man that had a familiar face that Harold couldn't place. He had very short brown hair and wore sunglasses. He was tall and thin. The eighth man was dressed in a black suit with a Christmas red tie. His long, straight black hair rivaled Ellen's. His pale skin was eerie, but his piercing red eyes held Harold's attention for a moment. Last there was Ida. Harold watched as her purple eyes stared at him. Her dress was unique and captivating. She was strange, even among the others. Harold had a difficult time concentrating. He couldn't take his eyes off Ida. This is Harold Thompson, the lead researcher in charge of this study. Over the next year, Michelle was cut off. Year. Harold snapped back into the room. His secular moment had been broken by Michelle's sudden proclamation of the time frame of his work. What's the matter, science boy? Your parents didn't tell you it was a sleepover. The shirtless man poked fun at Harold. Close your cankerous lips, Adonis. The young man in the dark suit quipped, I don't need to hear your bile for a year. He crossed his arms in disapproval. The young girl with red hair patted him on the arm. Now, David. That's no way to act in front of a stranger. I told you not to use my name here, Cherry. David became angry. The redhead laid back in her chair. So it's okay to call me out, then? Cherry was not amused. Adonis smiled at the interaction. Michelle stepped over to a white board that was behind her. She pressed a button and it slid back and into the wall. A large touchscreen display came forward. Is everyone paying attention? Or do you two need a minute outside? Michelle wasn't slowing down for anyone. She had a deadline to meet. No, we're not fighting, Cherry remarked. Michelle eyed Adonis and David. I'm talking about the shirtless wonder and the doogie over there. Adonis stopped smiling. David was not happy. Do you need a moment to pull each other's hair? Or are we ready to pay attention yet? Michelle had no mercy. David said nothing. Adonis sighed. All right, I'm sorry. I'll shut up. Harold patiently waited to hear what Michelle was going to say. 2 months ago, Cillian Industries contracted an excavation crew to remove and relocate a cemetery that had no living owner. The location has been kept confidential pending the results of this study. While digging, they exhumed a living body in the second level of a deep-chambered tomb. By the time an ambulance came, the body woke up and started claiming he owned the land. Harold was starting to piece things together. The man said that he had all the correct documents. When he showed them to the crew, and then to the foreman on site, everyone realized that the date read June 18, 1597. When asked to prove his relation to the deed, he left. 2 nights later, he appeared with 4 other men in front of the crew. He told them he was a vampire and that his name was the one on the deed. The excavation crew laughed and went about their business. The unknown man stayed and lifted one of their cat excavators with his hand. The crew immediately stopped laughing and called Cillian Industries. We in turn set this study into motion. Michelle placed her hand on the touchscreen. It lit up and read her palm print. An old document appeared on screen. Harold noticed it right away. Confirmed carbon dating, June 18, 1597. Yes, Harold, the analysis of the letter came back authentic, Michelle stated. And you just happened to go to the trouble of blurring out his name for us? The man in the Christmas red tie noted. It's for our own good, Marin, David grumbled. You're an ass, you know that, David, Adonis chuckled. Of that he knows. Cherry smiled and patted David on the arm again. So why are we here? The blonde girl in a short pleated skirt was curious. Michelle angrily took Harold's new clipboard away from him and searched for a name, hastily flipping the pages. She settled on one and looked up at the girl. Paige, right? Paige sat up a little straighter in her chair. Yes? You're a vampire, and you didn't know what signing up for this test means for your kind. Michelle was visibly irritated. No, Paige was cut off. You what? Michelle went off. You come here thinking that you can just walk in and volunteer for a study that will define how the rest of the world views you? With no ideas or thoughts on the subject you're actively affecting? Or am I wrong? I guess maybe. Paige's answer further infuriated Michelle. Herald stepped in. Well, that's what we're here to find out. He took a step forward. This study will help us and all of the world to realize what miracles you hold in your bodies. We're sure to find out all your little secrets and inspect everything your body has to offer. Everything? Paige crossed her legs and smiled at Herald. Everyone in the room caught the subtext of Paige's words, except for Herald. Yes, everything. Herald smiled unwittingly. Michelle calmed down enough to continue. As I said, this study will change things. It will change the way the world works. Besides the blood and flesh, how do you plan on testing our gifts? Ieda entered the conversation. Herald was set back by her voice. He was too bothered to actually hear her question and respond. Michelle stepped in. We'll be noting your gifts, but only the ones we can quantify. Everything else will simply be added to your medical file. What she said. Herald turned to Michelle and nodded. Ieda placed her left hand onto Herald's right shoulder. She had moved next to him while he was turned. There was no sound, no peripheral motion to be seen. She had simply appeared next to him. She slid her right hand up to Herald's chest and paused. What is it? Herald wanted to know why Ieda was interested in him all of a sudden. What indeed? Don't worry, we'll talk about her later. Ieda gracefully sat back down in her seat. Sounds like a lass has had your heart lately, the middle-aged man with the Irish accent commented. Ellen turned to the ginger man with disapproval. Oh, I'm sorry, dearie. The name's Crystal O'Brien. Crystal stood up enough to extend his hand to Herald. Nice to meet you. Herald shook Crystal's hand awkwardly. Then you will be submitting your findings to the world? Freely. A bold, inhuman voice boomed out from the one remaining person yet to reveal himself in the room. Herald finally recognized who the person was. Laurel Fessenden. I knew it was you. You're the lead singer from Seven Simple Sins, a bastardization of what you are, Laurel, David complained. I don't see you complaining when you use your gifts for profit, Laurel scoffed. David, not complain? That's unheard of, Adonis joked. Go to hell, Adonis, David griped. No problem, I have friends there. Adonis grinned happily, knowing he bested David. Be quiet, children, grown-ups are talking, Michelle interjected. Now that everyone has introduced themselves, we have business. The group sat still under Michelle's command. She was the authority, and it was clear. Herald turned to Michelle and listened. These tests have to include everything you do over the next year, Michelle said with a stern voice. Everything, meaning everyone? Adonis wanted to set the boundaries of the experiment with the lab. Michelle didn't take Adonis's comment lightly. She faced him with a scowl and elaborated. Each time you fuck, eat shit, and piss on your girlfriend's hands, I want you to note it. You will keep a journal of everything you do. There will be no exception, no limit to the test. Michelle could see another question welling up in the back of Adonis's mind. And yes, if you develop relations with someone on the research team during that year, I want you to jot it all down in your notes, Laurel sighed. Thank God, I was thinking I wouldn't have a chance to hit on Penny. Adonis turned to Laurel. I know, right? He gave Laurel an enthusiastic high five. Are you boys going to start shooting stones at her now? Michelle was purposely condescending. No, but I think we will be shooting something at her if the timing's right. Adonis made his lewd intentions known. Laurel tried to keep from smiling while he quickly got up and high-fived Adonis. Michelle rolled her eyes and looked at Cherry for feminine support. Don't look at me. I plan on having a turn with Penny as well. Cherry was just being honest. But her comment seemed to further annoy Michelle. Cherry turned to the two men and put her hands up. Laurel and Adonis leaned over and struck her hands at the same time. Now that you understand the depth of the testing criteria, you may want to listen for the rest of the briefing. Michelle was trying not to be staggered by the conversation she had just witnessed. Your involvement here is confidential and not to be discussed with anyone outside of this facility. Michelle faced the troublemakers of the group. That includes anyone you're doing sick and twisted things with, she continued. The testing will last from 1 hour before dusk until 1 hour after dawn. Isn't that a bit late? Herald asked. Would you rather it be during the day? Michelle proposed. Well, yes. Running a lab in the evening is hard enough. People fall asleep and tubes get mislabeled. I can't imagine what would happen if we actually did this overnight. Herald was voicing his concerns. Adonis, show him why we can't do this during the day, Michelle instructed. Gladly. Adonis got up and walked over to a side panel of the room. Michelle flipped a switch next to the wall. The panel suddenly slid to the side, exposing a bright sun that enveloped Adonis. He immediately burst into flames and began screaming in pain. "Oh God, put him out!" Harold yelled, scrambling for the fire extinguisher. No one was doing anything to help Adonis, not one person. Harold found the alcove with the fire safety equipment and pulled out the red CO2 tank. He raised the hose as Adonis flailed his arms back and forth around the room. Harold took aim and covered Adonis in white foam. He stopped screaming when his face was covered in what appeared like soap detergent. "Are you all right, Adonis? Can you hear me?" Harold was concerned. Adonis wiped his face off and stared at Harold. "What? What's wrong?" Harold asked again. "You hosed me. That's what's wrong." Adonis wasn't happy feeling wet. Harold noticed that the sun was still saturating Adonis. Nothing was happening. There was no fire this time. "Do you see why we can't do the testing during the day? How would all the vampires get into the building safely?" Michelle pointed out the obvious. "That's a good look for you, dearie. Do you want some hot chocolate to go with your marshmallow?" Crystal chuckled. "Don't embarrass us, please," Ellen pleaded with Crystal. Adonis lit up again in a short flash that annihilated the white foam. Harold jumped away, startled by the burst of energy. "Can you stop that? You're scaring the researcher," Cherry asked Adonis. "Why?" "He's kind of cute when he's squirming," Paige added with a smile towards Harold. Adonis stood naked. His clothing was completely burnt off of him. "Adonis, put that away." Michelle disapproved of Adonis's appendage. "Just because you don't enjoy it doesn't mean others don't," Paige commented. Crystal got up and high-fived Paige. When he sat back down, Ellen smacked his elbow after they held hands. "There's an extra set of knickers in my room if you'd like," Laurel offered. "No, I like the breeze." Adonis turned. "Michelle, you can continue any time." He sat down, crossed his legs, and waited for everyone to settle down. Harold watched Adonis's skin. It was undamaged. His hair was partially scorched, but no more than a little. He studied Adonis as he was. "We'll be testing him, right?" Harold was getting excited to explore new avenues, to stake claim on new territory that no one had ever seen. "Yes, we'll be testing all of their talents," Michelle told Harold. "Now that you understand what's going on, this will be a lot easier."